Back in April 2023, Illumination released the movie adaptation of the Mario video game franchise called the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and it was fine. The Brooklyn intro and Bowser scenes are really good, but outside of it the pacing is a mess, there's no well-written character development, and it overall feels like the story was written by a team who had a few action scenes in mind and needed an excuse to tie those moments together. But at the same time, the movie isn't trying to be anything special, it's just trying to be fun, and it does a pretty good job at it. 6 out of 10 would only rewatch the Brooklyn and Bowser scenes. As an adaptation though, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. They did a really good job bringing this world to life. I especially appreciate how most references either just happen in the background and aren't pointed out, or the elements that serve the stories and the characters are in the Mushroom Kingdom. Although, ironically enough, I wouldn't actually recommend this movie to those who want to learn more about the lore, since it gets a lot of things wrong. Still, it remains an impressive adaptation. One thing it did not adapt well, however, is the characters' personalities, with all of them being more or less out of character. For the most part, they did a serviceable enough job. Mario and Bowser lack the usual flair their characters have, but they're still recognizable to an extent. Luigi was really good. While he wasn't as scared as his game's counterpart, the movie still insists on him being fearful, and anything else about his character is there. Then you have Kamek, Dicky and Cranky who are done pretty dirty. But out of all those differences made for the big screen, there is one character in particular that was completely changed beyond recognition. A change that skewed people's perception for the worse that might not bleed into the franchise for years to come. Hey everyone, it's Floor here, and today we'll be talking about my girl Princess Peach. More specifically, the differences between her usual portrayal in the games and whatever the Mario movie tried to do with her. Or rather didn't try, but I'm already getting ahead of myself there. Now, for some context, this video is based on a Tumblr post I wrote back in September of last year, link in description. I would have done this video earlier, but I wanted to wait for Princess Peach Showtime to come out first, hence the long delay. There's also a bunch of other posts I made later on talking about this issue and adding onto the main post, so I'm going to link those as well. So, movie Princess Peach. As an original character, I actually really like her. She's fun, entertaining, and I like how they avoided some of the traps of the strong female character stereotype by making her a side character, meaning it's not that big of an issue if she doesn't have any character developments and the story isn't about her anyways. Her role is to help Mario navigate this new world and she does the job well. She's even pretty nice about it, asking how Mario feels on several occasions. So yeah, as an original character, I like Movie Peach. And let's not joke ourselves there, Movie Peach is an original character. There is no character in the Mario franchise that is remotely similar to her. Some people say she's like Daisy, but I disagree. Daisy is a lot more laid back when it comes to her duty as a princess compared to how serious Movie Peach is. So yes, Movie Peach is a completely original character made up by Illumination. And that's the issue, isn't it? She's not supposed to be an original character. She's meant to be an adaptation of a pre-existing character, one who existed for almost 40 years now and has a very well-defined personality. And as an adaptation, Movie Peach fails at every level. I am not exaggerating when I say that these two only have a single personality trait in common, which isn't enough in the slightest when making an adaptation, and that's not even getting into how this specific trait doesn't mean much when looking at the other characters. And other than this trait, they either share none or have some that are technically similar but expressed in different ways, so they might as well be two different traits. Seriously, the only thing these two have in common are the physical appearance, platforming abilities and karting abilities, all of which are not even personality traits. That's literally it. And I want to make it clear, the issue is not Movie Peach's role in the story. If anything, I'm incredibly happy they decided to make her more active and have Luigi be kidnapped instead. Not only does this give Peach the spotlight that gets so often taken away from her in the games, it also makes more sense story-wise for Mario to save his brother. If I were to rewrite the movie to make Peach in character, this is absolutely something I would keep. In fact, I actually had someone on Tumblr ask me how I would write Movie Peach, prompting me to rewrite all her scenes while keeping the structure of the movie, so check that out if you're curious, link in the description. Now, before we start with the meat of this video and compare the two, there's a few things I want to clarify about this topic first, just to make sure we're on the same page. First off, no, it's not about the pants. Peach has worn pants many times before and will continue to do so. The people complaining about this need to get off Twitter. Also, the biker outfit she wears is literally the same as the games, like, why are people even complaining about this? Second, in case it needs to be said, the issue isn't about making her a strong female character, it's about her being out of character. If they made her a goth or overly meek or something else, I'd still call it out for being out of character. And while I do have some issues with the strong female character stereotype, the problem with Peach here has nothing to do with this archetype specifically, it's how this adaptation compares to the source material. Now, there might be something to be said about the current state of Hollywood and how this is the reason why Peach being a strong female character is being talked about so much, meaning I technically wouldn't have done this video otherwise, but again, this is not about the archetype itself, it's about her being a bad adaptation. And on that note, this has nothing to do with the whole woke argument. I do not trust anyone who uses the term woke unironically. It's a word bigoted people hide behind to complain about diversity without looking bigoted, and I will not use it in this video. If looking on this video expecting me to rant about women existing and how Hollywood is ruining your happiness by giving minorities the representation they've been desperately seeking out for years, you can get the fuck out of there. I do not want you on my channel. Third, this video isn't meant to be a dig against people who enjoy the movie or even this version of Peach. Like I said in the intro, she's good as an original character, and while I don't find the movie to be anything exceptional, it's still fun and entertaining. Also, it's completely fine for you to like something even if it's objectively not great. I mean, my favorite Mario movie is the 1996 anime, and I'm the first one to agree it's bad. Some people might prefer the live action one, and honestly, good for them. So don't take this video like some sort of personal insult. It's just me explaining my stance on this situation, and hopefully give more insight as to why some of us Peach fans were unhappy with the depiction in this movie. I don't expect to change people's opinions on the matter. I'm just hoping to make some understand where Peach fans are coming from. On that note, please don't use this video as an excuse to harass anybody. It's completely fine to have opinions on something and share said opinion, that's literally what I'm doing with this video, but it's not worth calling someone names over. By the end of the day, we're all just a bunch of weirdos arguing about a fictional magical pink princess from a franchise aimed at children, so please don't be a dick about it. Fourth, I'm not going to discuss movie Peach's design and voice. Every character had some design changes in the movie and Peach's are pretty minimal, it's just small details. As for the voice, I frankly don't care that much. The most I care about it was the changes in Showtime, but that was mostly fear of Nintendo changing a character for the worst. Once it became obvious Showtime didn't change her personality, the voice change stopped being an issue. Also, her voice in the movie isn't even that deep, it's just a regular woman's voice. Same with Showtime or even Mario 64 where she sounds deeper than usual. So while I would have appreciated movie Peach sounding a bit more like the game's usual voice, it's not something I would put on the same level as personality changes, which is what this video is about. And since I'm at it, obviously this video is not meant as an attack on the voice actor. Anna Taylor-Joy's job was to voice a character based on how she was taught to voice her, and that's what she did. I did hear rumors about her insisting she wanted movie Peach to be badass, but then I also heard people claim she intended on sorting higher Peach until she saw the script, so who knows. Also, from my understanding of it, voice actors have less power over the writing in animation than they do live action. All this to say, if you have an issue with movie Peach's character, blame the director and writers. If you have an issue with the voice being too deep, blame the voice direction for not telling Taylor-Joy to use a higher pitch. And I'm not saying Taylor-Joy is some perfect angel who do no wrong, I don't know anything about the woman. In general, I don't care about celebrities and as a result don't know jack shit about any of the cast. When I'm saying that the characters' writing isn't the fault of the voice actors, they weren't the one who wrote those characters, so I'm not going to put the blame on Taylor-Joy for not doing something that wasn't even a job to begin with. Finally, a few words about the Adventures comics, as I won't have much occasion to discuss it in detail later on, and people like to use it as some sort of checkmate. Yes, Peach in the Adventures comic, which we're going to call Adventures Peach for this segment, is a lot more feisty and willing to fight than Peach in the games usually does. That's absolutely true, but there are still two main differences between her and movie Peach. One, Adventures Peach is very smart and quick on her feet, while movie Peach really isn't. That's actually all I'm going to say about it for now, as the intelligence comparison is going to be its own segment. 2. Movie Peach is an amazing fighter while Adventure Peach is terrible at it. I'm serious. Go back and read the comic and tell me how many times Peach actually fights, because the answer is once. 4 if you want to be generous. Peach in that comic angrily runs against Bowser and immediately goes after him, but then the next time we see her she gets attacked by Lekitus and immediately gets kidnapped. Literally first opponent and she loses. Then she dropkicks on the Koopalings, the only actual attack she does in that comic, and proceeds to escape without fighting once. Unless you want to count her throwing furniture or using the cape to throw off Roy, hence saying she does 4 attacks. But honestly, her needing to throw furniture to defend herself just further highlights her lack of physical abilities, since using furniture feels more like a last resort if you actually know how to fight. Then, when she goes back to El Mario, she threatens to blow up the place but never actually does anything when Wendy calls out her bluff, she just tries to bluff harder, and in the end the bombs are set off by accident. She also doesn't participate at all in this fight, it's all Yoshi and Luigi. We only see her in one shot where she's running around in the background. Then next time we see her she's getting bumped into the others. It's actually pretty funny how Mario gives her credit for saving him, when the most she does is distracting the Koopalings long enough for Luigi to steal the keys, which Yoshi and Todd could have done anyways. Then after this whole mess, she gets kidnapped again, throws some more furniture, and gets hypnotized, with the last thing of importance she does being untying Mario while Luigi and the Yoshis are doing the fighting. So yeah, to say Peach was badass in this comic is a lie. She does talk like a badass, which might be why most people remember her as such, but her actions don't follow through. Or at least I'm going with the assumption that when people say badass, they mean someone being able to physically fight and protect themselves without help and kicking ass doing so. Because admittedly, I do find her escape to be badass, but that's not because of her physical abilities, it's due to her intelligence, but again, more on that later. In any case, those two differences are pretty big, and show how Adventure Speech is more in line with the games than the movie version, even despite the feisty attitude Adventure Speech displays. And last little thing about this comic, I actually find it pretty funny that people are trying to use it to argue that Movie Peach is a good adaptation. I mean, we're talking about the one exception where Peach is more feisty than usual. You'd think that they would ignore this obvious outlier and instead focus on her game's personality. But no, we have to use Adventures George over there. God, people outside of Tumblr will not understand that joke. This comic was also made back in the early 90s. Why are you basing your character on such old media rather than the recent ones like, oh I don't know, the Mario Plus Rabbids games and Princess Peach Showtime? And fun fact, as I'm talking about how old this comic is, it's actually outdated, which we know because the Koopalings are explicitly said to be Bowser's children, including in the 2017 re-release of the comic, despite this parental link getting officially retconned back in 2012. Oops. But yeah, all this to say, this comic is not the hot gotcha moment a lot of people think it is. If anything, it's even more proof of the movie's blunder, since the comic is able to stretch the limit of how feisty Peach can be written while still recognizable. The comic even drew some great comedy out of it due to the difference between how willing to fight Peach is compared to how terrible she is at it. Like, I'm very amused by this shot at the beginning where she jumps out her window and has the Toads helping her out. I can't help but imagine a scenario where the Toads fail to catch up with her, causing her to fall face first on the ground, and then stand back up still as right up as before the fall. So that's all I had to say as a prelude, and man was this a long intro. And as one last heads up for comprehension, whenever I'll be talking about the movie version I'll call her Movie Peach, while for the game version I'll use Game Speech. I might also say Peach a few times without descriptor, but hopefully it will be obvious which one I'm talking about then. And just so you know, Game Speech also includes the 1986 anime The Great Mission to Rescue Princess Peach, along with the 1992 Super Mario Adventures comic. I won't be talking about other more obscure media as I don't know them, same for the 19th American cartoons that I didn't watch. Oh yeah, and I'm going to talk about pretty much every Mario game that has Peach in it, so obligatory spoilers warning for the RPGs and Showtime. Now with this very long intro out of the way, let's finally get to it. All the personality differences between Game Speech and Movie Peach.
Okay, let's go!
Yeah, I was starting off by addressing the elephant in the room. When it comes to physical abilities, Movie Peach is an amazing fighter, there is no doubt about this. It's obviously her biggest strength and she knows it. In fact, she knows it so much that it's her de facto answer to everything. Bowser is coming to our kingdom, get an army and fight. Some stranger shows up, dropping on the ground. The people who are trying to recruit show their fangs, give it right back to them. Bowser's here, it's fighting time. We can earn some time to figure out something better or maybe dropping Bowser's guard with a wedding. Fuck that, we're fighting. Movie Peach is all about fighting, and that side of her is very, very different from Game Speech. Alright, so to start off, yes, Game Speech had participated in many adventures and battles before, going as far back as Super Mario Bros. 2 USA and even earlier if you want to include the 86 anime. She also recently got her own games that heavily includes fighting as well. I am in no way trying to take those accomplishments away from her or diminish them. However, while Game Speech has fought before, there are a few notable things about her side that really steer her away from the movie. First off, while Game Speech is capable of fighting when she needs to, it's not her first answer to a situation, far from it actually. If anything, Game Speech would much rather take a peaceful option to her problems. This is something that is especially present in the RPGs. In Paper Mario and Mario Luigi, she asks Mario to fight her battles, which she also does in the 86 anime. In the first Mario Plus Rabbids game, you meet her pretty early on, yet she doesn't join the team yet. Instead, she asks you to deal with Junior, only deciding to help much later. While looking for footage on the official Nintendo channel, I also find what seems like an early version of Peach joining the team, where she's fine on the map like Luigi is, and you can see her take forever before choosing violence. And even afterwards, she looks surprised about it before going, oh well, along with her holding her gun like it was the most foreign thing she's ever seen. Plus, in that game and Sparks of Hope, Peach plays a supporting role, being a character meant to heal and protect the hard hitters. She still has her own attack obviously, but she's not a character you use for high damage, that's the role of the character she's here to shield. She's on the defense, not the offense. Same deal with Super Mario RPG, 3 out of the 6 special moves are healing related, with another 2 being status effect and only 1 being an attack, which is also the last move she unlocks for those who think it might matter. As for her triple moves, the one focused on her is a shield, the one focused on Milo is also a shield, and while the one with Bowser is an attack, the animation shows Peach participating by throwing the superstar rather than doing any attack. Again, I'm not saying that she doesn't fight, I'm saying she'd rather play a supporting role than an offensive one in those fights. Then there's also Smash Bros. Yes, the fighting game series. In Brawl, there's one cutscene in which Peach truly shines. And what does she do in it? She's stopping fights left and right, encouraging people to work together, in a fighting game. And I love her right before the fight against Mr. Game & Watch, everyone is taking a fighting stance except for her. It's so dumb, I love her. While looking at footage of her attacks, I also learned that apparently she had a kick in the air that was replaced with a punch with rainbows, her Toad shield in Ultimate has a core armor, and her grabs now involve Toad helping, all of which make her less involved into the fight, especially the Toad ones. Plus, her final smash isn't an attack, it makes other players fall asleep while giving Peach a means to heal. I'd also like to mention that one silent trailer for Smash Ultimate that got memed a lot. Peach is shown along with Zelda, but then a gust of wind surrounds them and, while Zelda looks serious, Peach gets completely distracted by it and drops her fighting stance. I think she's actually the only character in that trailer looking unwilling to fight outside of Isabelle and the Pikmins. And speaking of fighting stance, she does that in one cutscene of Orbit Sparks of Hope as well. When meeting Midnight, everyone takes a fighting stance except for Peach, who instead puts an arm in front of Captain Orion, which again goes well with her playing support in that game. Instead of being focused on the enemy, her attention is on making sure everyone is safe. There's also a moment in the last Spark Hunter DLC where several characters take a fighting stance and Peach is one of the few that don't, instead having a surprised expression, which actually makes me wonder if she even has a fighting stance animation in that game. Oh, and lastly, if you want to include it, in the Mario Party game she doesn't punch people but instead pushes them, but that's also something Daisy does, so I don't know how much it counts for Peach being more of a pacifist. There's also one of the pictures from 3D Land showing her defending herself against a pile of Goombas, and she looks very uncomfortable doing so. Also, like I said in the intro, she barely does any actual fighting in the Adventures comic and instead uses a wit, so there's that too. Oh, and her fight focus ability in Super Paper Mario is to shield herself. Now, is all of this proof enough to say with confidence that Game Speech doesn't like fighting? Not exactly. Admittedly, this list doesn't take into account the platformers in which Peach has no issue killing enemies like every other character does. There's also Super Princess Peach and Princess Peach Showtime, both having her hurt enemies without a second thought, and those games are centered around her. With that in mind, it's easy to argue that she actually doesn't mind fighting and that the movie wasn't too far off the mark with it. And while there is an argument to be made about her main weapon in Showtime not actually hurting anyone since it makes the enemies run away, that doesn't change the fact that she still fights them in some of her transformations. Ultimately, I do believe that the RPGs weigh a bit more into this conversation. Thing is, everyone has the same abilities in the platformers so that you can play as your favorite character without penalty. These games also have minimal stories and characters. I mean, just look at Luigi, he's the definition of Green Mario in this, save for some cutscenes. But with the RPGs, not only can they make bigger stories, they can also branch out the characters into different categories or classes, and those are based on the characters' personalities. Same deal with the Smash series, which again is a series of fighting games. So with Peach consistently being put as a healer and returned as more pacifist, I think it does matter more than her lack of worries from the platformers. But again, I absolutely understand people seeing it the other way around, especially with the platformers being much more popular and influential to the franchise, on top of the two Peach focus games we have, making her someone who fights. At the very least, it's worth noting that, unlike movie Peach, Game Peach doesn't always choose fighting as an answer to everything and is a lot more open to talking things out. Secondly, because yes, there's more to say about Game Peach and fighting, the way she fights. In the movie, Peach is an amazing physical fighter. She only uses a power-up for fighting once, and even then her physical prowess is still what's put on the forefront. Game Peach, on the other hand, is much more about what I'd call unconventional weapons. In Super Princess Peach, she uses a parasol. In Super Paper Mario, her abilities have to do with her parasol, including her shield. While she uses a gun like everyone else in the first Rabbids game, in Sparks of Hope, everyone has a character-specific weapon and she went back to her parasol. In Super Mario RPG, she uses a slap on the cheek, which I think is meant to be that stereotypical woman slaps a man and leave a mark thing. Other than that, she has a parasol, a fan, and a frying pan as a main attack. She also has magic in several RPGs, most notably healing magic. In Princess Peach Showtime, her main weapon is Stella's Ribbon, while Figure Skater and Mermaid Peach defeat enemies by dancing with them and singing to them respectively. And if you want to take it into account, her special moves in the sport game often has to do with hearts or ribbons or sometimes even both. Then there's also her throwing furniture in the 86 anime and Adventures comic. As for Smash Bros, I didn't actually play any of them, but looking at her descriptions and some footage, her attacks are related to digging up turnips that are sometimes bombs, using her parasol, frying pan, sport gear, shielding herself with Toad, and her special smash is the most girly thing I've ever seen and it's kind of hilarious as well. And in terms of moves related to using her own body, she has that butt kick and several slaps, but apparently mainly does kicks while in the air, which oddly enough is in character since it seems to be a reference to her floating ability, using it as a way to hit people. So yeah, when you compare the way game speech and movie pitch approach combat, there's definitely a difference. And it's kinda funny how Mario plus Rabbids along with Showtime are the very first time Peach uses actual weapons and fighting techniques, despite being in Smash since Medley. Now yes, it does mean game speech is capable of the same feats as movie pitch. I mean, no way trying to deny that fact. But it's not her go-to way to approach the situation, unlike in the movie. Movie pitch's main and only weapon are her fist and kicks, while game speech's main weapons are her parasol and magic, with everything else being secondary or if she needs another way. Hell, unless you consider jumping on enemies as physical fighting, which I don't, the only times game speech did moves similar to the movie are in the sports game and one Showtime transformation. And while I'm a bit torn by those descriptions as I don't want to undermine her abilities, it's worth noting that Kung Fu Peach is one of the transformations whose description explicitly said that her costume is what's giving her those abilities, the others being ninja, mighty and figure skater. And with Peach sometimes using a parasol as a shield on top of her healing magic, it kind of goes into what I was saying earlier about her willingness to fight. They just have different priorities when fighting, with movie Peach being on the offense while game speech is on the defense, hence the divergence in fighting styles as well. And finally for this part, something I wasn't exactly sure I wanted to include because I don't think it actually matters much, but at least you can say I wasn't trying to be throughout. Game speech is pretty weak physically. I'm specifically talking about the sports game when I say that. If you look at the games that offer stats, her strength stat is always her weakest and is usually below average as well. She's also never put in the strength category for the games that do categorizing, almost always put in the technique box instead, which I do find to be very fitting for her. Although this doesn't count as a difference with the movie, since movie Peach clearly has a lot of knowledge on her technique too. There's also some games where you could assume which stat is a strength related one, and in those cases it still seems to be her weakest one. Like in the golf game, she doesn't throw as far as the others. In the baseball one, she's not great as batter, although she's good as pitcher, so who knows. In striker, she's bad at shooting, things like that. With that logic, what seems to be technique related is also her highest skills. By the way, if you're curious, you should check out the stats for all the characters. It's very interesting to see how surprisingly consistent they are for several game series made by different people. Oh yeah, and she's also called weak in one of her melee description, and that one Dr. Mario mobile games that doesn't exist anymore give her a low attack, in case you wanted example outside of the sports game. Also, in her trophy cutscene from Mario Strikers Battle League, unlike the other characters who struggle with the trophy out of clumsiness, she catches it perfectly but then almost drops it due to its weight. Now, I say I don't think it matters much because ultimately we don't know how physically strong movie Peach is. Plus, technique can play a huge role in your performance, regardless of strength. I mean, the Olympic Games has a martial art category and Peach can win in it despite those games putting her at low strength. Same deal with the fight-oriented Showtime transformation outside of Mighty due to its description. Still, the info is there, do what you will with it. So with all of that said, is movie Peach out of character in the way she approaches fighting? Honestly, I think she is. While both have great abilities and are both willing and capable to fight, movie Peach is just too focused on fighting and too much on the offensive, while game Peach seems much more comfortable supporting others and avoiding the blunt of the battle, using unconventional means doing so. And I will say, while I get the argument saying it's fine, I disagree with the people saying that movie Peach is in character simply because Peach had been playable in games before. The issue isn't whether or not she's capable, it's how those abilities are used and what personality goes with it, and in the case of the movie, it wasn't used properly. And the thing is, that overabundance of a desire to fight causes movie Peach to lack one trait that is actually pretty prominent in game speech, and when you're adapting a character, you shouldn't do that kind of trade-off. The trait that I'm talking about is...
On the case.
Now, before people jump at me in the comments, let me make something clear. I do not consider movie Peach an idiot. She's not dumb. But she isn't smart to a noticeable extent either. Basically, a character to me is either smart, average, or dumb. In the smart category, you have for example characters who are academically smart, very good at one specific thing that the media spends a lot of time showing in a bright light, street smart, or quick-witted, aka characters who are quick on their feet and know how to make good decisions when it matters. Game speech is that last category. Average character to me is where the majority of characters in all media are. Sometimes they make smart decisions, sometimes they make dumb ones, sometimes their decisions are not noticeably smart or dumb. Movie Peach is there. And if you want a word about dumb characters, there's often a negative connotation to them due to annoying characters and such, but honestly some dumb characters make for some fun comic relief, and don't get me started on himbos and how amazing they are. Hell, Bowser is the dumb character and he's the most well-written Mario character. All this to say, I don't consider a character good or bad depending on their intelligence. It's what the media does with their intelligence that matters. And regardless of whether I do or not, I wouldn't put movie Peach in the dumb category anyways. So, going back to the topic at hand, like I said, Game's Peach is noticeably smart, specifically quick-witted, which is something Movie Peach lacks. Another huge difference is that Movie Peach is incredibly impulsive and doesn't think things through, while Game's Peach is a lot more cautious with her plans. And when I'm at it, I'm also going to throw in their diplomatic abilities in this part, but intelligence moments first. I'm going to start with Movie Peach because I feel like this is what most people want to hear me explain. Here's a list of all the not so great decisions Movie Peach takes and why they're not great. First, when hearing about Bowser approaching, she decides to go on a trip to meet the Kongs and ask for their army. Thing is, from my understanding, she intended on going alone since the Toad explicitly says they are too weak for fighting, and according to her dialogue later on with Mario and the high-level training she gives him, it seems to be a dangerous trip. Which means that if she did end up going alone and anything happened to her, no one would have been able to help her or even know she was hurt. And between that and her being the only wall of defense the Toads have, let's just say it's a good thing Mario showed up when he did, if only as a safety precaution. Second, the way she trains Mario is kind of inefficient. Hey, you know in Mario games you start off with an easy level and work your way up to the hard ones? And how here we see that Mario was actually good at platforming? Yeah, well let's ignore all that. Now, I don't think it makes sense for Mario to struggle, but it should be due to the place being new. And with that logic in mind, why didn't Movie Peach just create an easier level for Mario to start on and then make harder and harder ones until the one from the movie? It might just be me, but I can't help but think it would have made things easier for both of them and help Mario finish earlier. Third, I wouldn't actually call it a stupid decision, but the fact she allowed Toad to join the adventure without training was kind of dangerous. I can accept it since it's basically implied that the people living in the Mushroom Kingdom were raised doing platforming, meaning Toad will be fine, but at the same time the movie also makes a point to show how weak Toads are. And it's not like Toad really does a lot throughout the adventure. So while I don't think it's a bad decision per se, you could definitely put it under impulsive. Fourth, her reaction when meeting the first Kong is not exactly how you expect a politician to be. I can understand her taking a fighting stance at first due to the surprise of the Kong roaring, but then why glare back at the Kong when things settle down a bit? Aren't you trying to get their help? Why trying to provoke them then? Fifth, jumping ahead a bit, you have a confrontation with Bowser, and to this day I still don't understand what she was trying to do, and it's all because of one line.
If you're going to use it now.
Why? If you're trying to stall so your people can escape, why tell Bowser to use a star now when the Toads are still making a run for it? If you're trying to fight Bowser, why encouraging him to use something that will make him literally invincible? If this is a suicide mission, again, why aren't you stalling so your people can escape? Just, what are you doing? And don't get me wrong, I know what Illumination was doing. They wanted to make Movie Peach look badass and wrote Bowser in a way that he wouldn't even think of using the star now, meaning whatever Movie Peach says, it won't lead to him attacking. But Movie Peach doesn't know that. She did not even know about Bowser's feelings for her, so why would she encourage him to use the star? Just, why? Had she said literally anything else, I would have understood she was trying to take Bowser on her own while allowing her people to flee, but with the light showing it, it just makes no sense. And speaking of Movie Peach doing crazy things, by far the best example of a fight-oriented attitude and lack of foresight has to be the Wedding Ice Flower plan. This plan is crazy dangerous and probably one of the worst ideas she could have had. Movie Peach attempted to single-handedly fight against an entire army, Bowser included, instead of, accept the wedding and lay low until Bowser has his guard down so she can steal the star. Now, some might argue that this plan is good because of the cages, meaning something needed to be down now to save all those people. This is true, the clock was ticking down and an ice flower is a good way to slow things down. But there's one little detail about this that people seem to forget.
I'll be sacrificing them in your honor.
Movie Peach didn't know about the cages! She intended on crashing the wedding from the get-go, cages or not. Also, there's no telling what Bowser would have done had Peach asked him not to drop the cages. After all, he claims to love her, doesn't he? And yes, we do see Peach glance at him horrified, only for Bowser to smile and order the drop of the cages. But who knows, maybe talking would have still worked. Or at least he could have delayed the drop of the cages long enough for Peach to think of something else. And this isn't the only issue with this plan, which goes again with Movie Peach not thinking things through. In the previous scene, Peach and Bowser make a deal. If Peach agrees to marry Bowser without complaints, Bowser will spare her people. But by attacking Bowser, Movie Peach goes back on the agreement, meaning that Bowser has every right to drop that bonsai bill on her kingdom. Since she couldn't hold her end of the bargain, why should Bowser? Yes, Bowser is messed up by wanting to murder people and I'm in no way saying his actions are good or forgivable, but the movie makes it clear it's routine for him, so his reaction isn't a surprise. Movie Peach should have considered that possibility before deciding to go back on her word. That's actually a pretty big missed opportunity on Illumination's end. We could have had Movie Peach learning that wanting to fight as a first response isn't always the best thing and in that case almost cost her her people. It could have been a way to give her a flow, but no, instead we just kind of glance over it. Sad. Finally, the worst part of this whole plan, it didn't even work. The ice on the chain's pulley started to break, distracting Movie Peach long enough for King Momom to blow up, causing her to lose her power up. The only reason why things didn't go to shit is because of Mario and Donkey Kong showing up. But again, Peach didn't know they were coming. Last time she saw them, they fell off of Rainbow Road, and she herself says that they lost Mario. She had no way of knowing they were coming to the rescue. In other words, had Peach been right about Mario and DK being gone, her entire plan would have gone to shit. The cages would have been dropped into the lava, Peach probably would have been forced to marry Bowser anyways or would have been captured and imprisoned, and Bowser would have had every right to take it out on the Toads. The entire plan from beginning to end is a disaster. And yet it's perfectly in character for Movie Peach to have such an idea, and perfectly showcases just how impulsive she is, going into fights without thinking of the consequences. So yeah, while not an idiot, Movie Peach isn't the smartest person in the room either, and it's pretty obvious Illumination was more focused on making her a badass than anything else. Although, if I had to give a positive about it, at least she's consistent. This is the kind of stuff I meant in the intro when saying that Movie Peach works as an original character. She's not a badly written character, she's a badly written adaptation. Because yeah, in comparison, Game's Peach is incredibly smart, more specifically witty, on top of being a lot more cautious. Have another list. In the 86 anime, she tricks Bowser, trapping him into a box, and while she doesn't get away with it, at least there were no negative consequences for it. In Super Mario RPG, her advisor refuses to let her join the team, and so she immediately pretends to be tired so that people will leave her alone and not check on her for a while, and devises a plan to sneak out of her room. In Princess Peach Showtime, there's an entire play all about her being a detective. In Paper Mario 64, she knows that attempting to escape will put the other people Bowser kidnapped in great danger, so instead she uses the situation to her advantage, sneaking around the castle looking for clues and resources that could help Mario in this quest. The fact she has the secret passages in the room to begin with also says something about her. She's also able to make a run for it in 3D Land, though she gets captured again. That being said, the fact she was originally in a room and was only put in a cage after trying to escape could imply that she was able to try running away in the new Super Mario Bros. Series, since she's in a cage in those games too. In Paper Mario The Thousand Years Door, from what I've seen she does the same as the previous game, sneaking around trying to find clues and using the computer to her advantage. In Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, she's told about Cacletta and immediately devises a plan to keep herself safe, switching places with Bardetta. In Partners in Time, she has the reflex to grab the Cobalt Star against the princess's shrubs, and while it doesn't save her, it does greatly help Mario and Luigi, since now they only have one sister to deal with. In Dream Team, Kamek disguised as Peach goes into hiding with Toadsworth, and Toadsworth later on comments on how we didn't notice a single difference when Kamek was posing as Peach, meaning the hiding plan is something Peach could have come up with. I'll admit I haven't seen much of Paper Jam, but I do know about Paper Peach having those cardboard cut out of herself that she uses to try and escape, which is smart. Not a game per se, but you have instances like Galaxy and 3D Land where Peach manages to send items to Mario or even attempts to escape, which is pretty reminiscent of Paper Mario 64, thus implying she had to sneak around to do those things. In general, Paper Mario 64 really puts into perspective how Peach acts during the kidnappings, showing that she doesn't just sit there and wait, she actively tries to either escape or help Mario. Again, depends on whether trying to escape will be dangerous or not. But to me, the best example of Game's Peach being quick-witted and resourceful has to be the Adventures comic. Yeah, I told you we'd get back to it. That entire sequence where Peach escapes from the Koopalings shows both her wit and prudence, and even her patience to an extent at the beginning. It starts with Peach hiding in a corner of her cell, making the Koopalings think she escaped. When they enter to check it out, she drops on them, using the surprise to stun them long enough for her to not only get out but lock the door as well. When it turns out Wendy wasn't with her brothers and gathered an army, instead of trying to fight, Peach knows she won't be able to win, so she runs away, making her way up to Wendy's room, which she seems to recognize to be her best bet at getting out. By the time the guards catch up to her, she already grabbed a few items and threw it to them, gaining more time on top of possibly getting rid of some guards by making them false and they're standing on stairs. Then, Peach takes a gamble at Wendy being feminine and gets to her closet, threatening to destroy her clothes to keep her at bay, and when Roy attempts to charge at her, she grabs another piece of cloth to get rid of him. Now, I don't know if Peach notices or not, but Wendy points out the cape since it's a power-up, and afterward Peach keeps it with her as she runs to the window, so either she kept it just because, or she noticed Wendy's reaction and immediately understood it would benefit her to keep it. And when she gets to the window, she doesn't actually jump. She notices the height and becomes hesitant, which gives an opening for the Koopalings to approach, and in her panic, Peach falls off. She doesn't jump, she accidentally falls, because she knows her limit and didn't know about the cape giving the ability to fly, so as far as she knew it was the end of the line. But lucky for her, the cap activates and after some struggle she gets the hang of it, then the rest of the story happens. This entire sequence Peach uses her brain. She makes a plan to get her cell open, runs where she believes could be the best way to escape, and does everything she can to keep her enemies at bay, all without having to fight directly. She also doesn't try to bite more than she can chew, which we see later on in the comic as well, like when she wakes up and panics until she sees Toad, which she's familiar with, and then follows Luigi's plan, trying to bluff long enough to stall. This is what a smart character looks like, and it's cool as hell without requiring fighting! And as said in the intro, this is also the second difference between Peach in the Adventures comic and Movie Peach, as Movie Peach would have handled that whole situation very differently. Now, does that mean that Game's Peach is always doing smart things? No. While her plans are always smart, that doesn't mean her decisions are. The best example of that is in Dream Team, with Peach approaching Luigi's dream portal because she heard a voice inside of it. Not only was this a stupid idea to approach something she doesn't know, but it got her kidnapped. And her being kidnapped not only brought more stress to Mario and Luigi, who would have found Phantasma anyways but without those stakes, but on top of that, the only reason Bowser ended this game to begin with is because the news of Peach's situation spread, and Bowser took it as a personal insult. So Peach's decision here got her in the bad spot, caused the necessary issues to Mario and Luigi, and caused two villains to be around rather than only one. So yes, Game's Peach can take bad decisions sometimes, nobody's perfect, but for the most part her ideas are good and benefit both her and her allies. This even includes plans like the one from the 86 anime. Like I said, she failed on that one, but there were no repercussions whatsoever, so it was still a smart attempt. Also, unlike the movie Wedding, she was only putting herself at risk here. There's nothing to indicate Bowser was going to hurt her people for her attempt at escaping. Hell, when Bowser does try to hurt other people, she steps in and tries to bargain with him. Back on topic, like I said, her plans almost always work. Whenever she thinks of something that could help, it's effective. Her carelessness in Dream Team happens at a time where everything is fine and dandy, so while it wasn't smart of her, she had no reason to believe something would go wrong. But when things are serious and she comes up with an idea, it's clever and effective. Oh, and before I forget, in my original post that this video is based on, I also mentioned how Game's Peach has very high technique in the sport games, which shows a level of intelligence, at least from my understanding of what technique is. But like I said in the fighting part, Movie Peach is shown as an amazing fighter who clearly has a lot of technique, so it's not really proof that Game's Peach is smarter. Finally, a word about the diplomacy skills. I'm going to start with Game's Peach since it's shorter to explain. Thing is, there aren't that many moments showing her as a diplomat, and in general we don't really see her do a lot of ruling, which we'll get to later. But what we do know is that she's a very respected and beloved ruler, and when interacting with others she's comfortable, polite and respectful, but not to the point of becoming submissive, not being afraid to speak up when she needs to. If I had to give the few examples we have, in Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga she talks with Queen Bean for a few minutes, and once she leaves, Queen Bean has nothing but positive things to say about her, showing Peach made a very good first impression. In the Paper Mario games, we see how she interacts with new people, with the most notable for me being Luffy in Super Paper Mario. Luffy does her angsty teen things to which Peach doesn't immediately react, staying polite to the girl, and when she comments on Luffy, Peach asks if she said something wrong, showing her desire to be polite and respectful. Princess Peach Showtime could probably be another example with how she interacts with other characters, or as TV Trope says it, her being a good actress is a good skill for politics. So yeah, while we don't see much of Peach being a politician, the little we see do give a fairly positive view of her abilities. Movie Peach on the other hand, it's a bit more complicated. First off, we never see her people question her actions, they just nod along to all her decisions. As a result, we don't get to see her be a politician to them, we don't know how she rules, she just does what she wants and the thought go along with it for no reason. In comparison, even movie Bowser gives us some insight on how he does things. When talking about his dream wedding, the other Koopas stop cheering and ask questions, prompting Bowser to be violent on one of them before threatening the Mushroom Kingdom, which wins the crowd back. What we learn in this scene is that the Koopas have a survival of the fittest type of mentality, and Bowser is their king because he's the strongest Koopa. His rule is based on violence and intimidation, which could also explain why the Blue Shy guy, who seems to be one of his highest ranked officers, is so unhinged and dangerous. Movie Peach on the other hand doesn't give us any of that. Hell, it's even worse than that actually. When Peach and Mario are about to embark on their journey, one Toad interrupts to ask who Mario is. Thing is, out of all the questions Peach could have expected her people to ask, this one was the most obvious one. And yet, when the camera goes back to her, Peach is frozen mid-speech and looks surprised, needing a few seconds to get her composure back. This Toad has the most obvious thing and Movie Peach needs a few seconds to know what to do. And when she does, she doesn't even answer the question. She dismisses it in a way that makes the Toad shut up. That's not the sign of a good diplomat. Same deal when talking to Cranky. Movie Peach looks very uncomfortable in that scene, which could be an interesting character flaw, but the movie doesn't go there. And also it would be weird to have diplomacy of all things be her one flaw when she's supposed to be a politician. So instead, we're left with a diplomat who doesn't know how to act like one. She looks like she doesn't know how to greet Cranky, blurts out a "that's it" in surprise, and interrupts the meeting, which Cranky himself points out to be impolite. I'll also put the scene later on when they're planning to ambush Bowser. We again see Movie Peach lose the composure, which Cranky clearly isn't impressed by. Compare this to Queen's Bean dialogue 5 minutes after meeting Game's Peach. Now I'm not going to count her smiling smugly when Mario wins the fight, as it seems like a normal reaction in that case, but yeah, everything else, not really how you expect a ruler to act. And one last small thing since I'm at it, it's something I don't fully see as proof that she's a bad diplomat, since I can understand where she's coming from, but the fact that she didn't even know about Bowser's feelings for her makes me wonder just how much did she actually try to talk things out with him before going to war. But at the same time, it's entirely possible she did try sending him a message only for the thought she sent to get attacked, or Bowser has a reputation as a monster and his action at the Penguin Kingdom only proved it further. So I can understand Movie Peach seeing war as the only solution from the get-go. So yeah, I don't consider it proof that she's a bad politician, but it's there for those who think it's relevant. And regardless of whether or not this counts, the other moments are proof enough that her diplomacy skills leave a lot to be desired, to say kindly. All in all, it's pretty obvious that, while Movie Peach isn't stupid, she is not on the same level as Game Peach, both in intelligence and diplomacy. She doesn't make up plans like Game Peach does, and she doesn't approach the situation the same way, being way less cautious and more fight-oriented, to the point of not always realizing the consequences of her actions. She also doesn't seem like the kind of person who can think of something on the fly unless it has to do with fighting, compared to Game Peach who is more than able to improvise if the situation calls for it. And it's honestly kind of sad that they remove Peach's second biggest strength for the sake of amplifying one of her more minor strengths, to the point of making her out of character for it. But if I just called Peach's intelligence her second biggest strength, what's number one then? I'm glad you asked.
I got it!
A bit of a shorter part, but given how big of a trait it is for Peach, this gets its own section. So, as said in the intro, Movie Peach is indeed a nice person. She cares deeply for her people, to the point of being willing to sacrifice herself for their well-being, until she doesn't but still, and she's very caring towards Mario, checking on how he feels on several occasions and doing her best to cheer him up when he's down. All of this is nice, I'm not denying it, but the thing is, it's not Peach levels of nice, if I can call it that. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Movie Peach is a side character whose role in the movie is to guide Mario in his adventure, being both a teacher and a companion for him. And that's what she does, and she does it pretty well, but that's kind of it. Now, I'll admit, I'd probably be fine with the way the movie handled her kindness if it weren't for the other personality traits that got changed. Like, if Movie Peach was overall more in character, the fact we don't get to see her never-ending kindness would likely be a non-issue for me. But since she isn't more in character, quite the opposite, this element sticks out like a sore thumb. Then again, I do mention in my rewrite that the way the movie was written doesn't let much place to showcase Peach's kindness. Still not satisfied with the movie's approach though. Like, the second half is fine, but you really didn't need those small jabs she makes at Mario's expense in her character introduction. In comparison, Game Peach is quite literally the kindest, sweetest person you'll ever meet. The best example I can give is in Mario Odyssey. Right after you beat Bowser in the Cloud Kingdom, he gets sent back on his ship, and for a second, Peach looks at him with what seems to be concern, I think. As a reminder, Bowser kidnapped her and is forcing her to marry him. And here, Bowser just got beat up by Mario who is actively trying to save Peach. Yet she takes a moment to check on Bowser, making sure he's okay. If that doesn't say something about how nice Peach is, I don't know what does. In general, Peach is surprisingly nice to Bowser considering all the shit he does. In Sunshine, she's nice to Junior and seems to like the kid in general despite how awkward it might be for her. In the second Rabbids game, she has no issue working with Bowser and in the last Park Hunter DLC, is even proud of him when he does the bare minimum of letting the Rabbids cry on him. In Smash Melee, yes we're bringing the fighting games again, she's said in her trophy description to be incredibly forgiving, including towards Bowser. And it's not just Bowser either. Remember when I said that Movie Peach was impulsive unlike Game Peach? I actually half-lied there, as Game Peach can be impulsive at times, jumping in situations without thinking. But unlike Movie Peach who is impulsive regardless of the situation, Game Peach is only active impulsively when it comes to helping others. In other words, Peach's impulsiveness is fully tied to her kindness, and that kindness is extended to villains as well. In the 4 big examples I have, the first is the intro of 3D Worlds where Peach is the first to jump into the pipe in order to save the pixie. The second is the intro of Super Princess Peach when she realizes what Bowser did and immediately tries to run after him, only stopping when Toad's Wars calls for her. To an extent, this is also what she does in the Adventures comic, running after Bowser due to him hurting her people and then immediately wanting to jump into action after hearing Mario got captured. The third example is in Super Paper Mario, where after defeating Mimi, she tells her to get herself to a safe spot and, when the ground caves in, Peach tries to save Mimi and even expresses surprise over her actions when Mimi calls it out, which could also show that Peach being impulsive isn't common to her, hence why she doesn't understand why she acted that way. And finally, the last example is in Mario Tennis Aces. In the intro cutscene, Wario and Waluigi show up and collapse to the ground, with Peach immediately running up to them, needing a Toad to jump in and remind her that the duo is trouble. And outside of those examples, there's also literally the entire Princess Peach Showtime game. Her main weapon in that game is a ribbon that helps people feel better. Literally the boss fights are Peach killing them with kindness. And let's not forget Radiant and Super Radiant Peach being created through the teens' hopes and dreams and positivity as a whole. Like when you think about it, Showtime really displays how sweet and kind Peach is, helping the character from the goodness of her heart, and doing so by embracing happiness and hopefulness to fight against Grape's darkness and despair. All in all, Peach is an incredibly nice person who values friendship and understanding over fighting and is willing to lend a hand to anyone, including people who don't deserve it. She even comes off as naive at times because of it, being too trusting to the point it can be a flaw, though the games don't really go into that direction. But even with that in mind, her kindness remains her biggest strength. The only time she could be considered as unkind is during her adventures when fighting against enemies, but then again those are trained soldiers working for Bowser and she's doing it to protect innocent people. Peach also comes off as someone who's unable to truly hate anybody. Now you do have the way she talks to Bowser in the Adventures comic, and while I don't have the dialogue, I'm pretty sure at least one RPG game mentions that Peach hates Bowser. But outside of the Adventures comic where, yeah, she hates him, the game's version really doesn't give that impression. That doesn't mean she can dislike people, she absolutely can, but I don't think she's capable of straight up hating someone, unlike Movie Peach who couldn't be more obvious about her contempt for Bowser, as justified as her feelings are. Game Peach really just tries to believe the best of everyone to a fault, while Movie Peach is a lot more guarded on that front.
Oh, did I win?
So for this part, we're going to go over a handful of traits that, while they don't define Peach's character, they're still a part of her that often comes up. In other words, we're seeing the 2/3 of that table, and how Movie Peach either lacks those traits or, like the fighting abilities, expresses it differently than the game's version. I'm grouping them all together because they're short and easy to explain. Starting off, we have the sassiness. To put it simply, Movie Peach is sassy in a very snarky way, especially evident in how she interacts with Mario before they leave the Mushroom Kingdom. Game Peach on the other hand is sassy but in a much more playful way. A good example is the ending of Mario Odyssey. Peach is angry at Mario for the way he just acted, so before calling him to go home, she starts the Odyssey, forcing Mario to run and jump to get on. You also have in Superstar Saga when she reveals she still has a voice and loves at Mario and Luigi's reaction. It's very playful on her end. Or a few more moments in Super Mario RPG, like the kiss scene if a kid gets interrupted, or when Bowser claims that Mario is his minion now, causing Mario to explain in a panic. In both instances, Peach starts laughing about it, and in the second case she laughs while comforting Mario by saying that she believes him. The only instances of Game Peach being sassy in a minor way is in the Mario Striker series, and even then he was toned down in the latest game. Moving on to a trait that barely actually matters, when things get serious, Movie Peach expresses it with a provocative attitude, like when she goes to comfort Bowser, while Game Peach lets her caring side shine more in those situations, being more concerned about keeping other people safe rather than confronting the enemy. For example, in Super Paper Mario when the characters talk about finally comforting Blake, and Peach expresses concern for the people that will die if they fail. When Movie Peach is serious, she's thinking of the fight ahead and has her head in the game. When Game Peach is serious, she's thinking of the people she's trying to protect. Again, it's a very small thing, and in a way it was already talked about in the fighting section, but it's in the table so might as well mention it. There's also that confidence as a more subtle trait that doesn't weigh that much. Long story short, Movie Peach is overly confident, shown with how much she smiles during fights, while Game Peach is confident but not to that level. She can smirk at times but still has a more serious expression during fights. A good example is with Showtime. Some of her poses and renders have a smirk, but when she's in an actual fight she's frowning instead, being more serious than focused. There's also stuff like one of the ads for Rabbids Sparks of Hope where Peach's contribution is to get rid of a group of enemies and then sign relief, which I'm not sure why I didn't mention in the part about her not liking to fight. Speaking of which, there's also this ad with both Luigi and Peach looking at Mario as a way to boost their confidence, which is really cute. But yeah, all this to say, Game Peach doesn't have the same level of confidence in the fighting abilities as Movie Peach, though she still is confident. Game Peach also comes off as more humble as a result. Moving on, we get to two traits that Game Peach has but Movie Peach lacks, those being her stubbornness and temper. Starting with the stubbornness, there are a few ways to define it but I'm going with two. First, when a character tries to do something, doesn't succeed and isn't even sure if they can succeed but they do it anyways. Second, when a character wants to do something that might be a bad idea, is being told by others that it's a bad idea, but decides to do it anyways. Movie Peach doesn't have either of those. When she takes a decision, her people follow without question, so she doesn't meet any opposition to her ideas. Mario also follows her lead since he's new here. And on that note, Movie Peach gives in very quickly when Mario asks for her help. And when she does meet opposition, it's either when convincing Cranky to give his army or it's when refusing to marry Bowser. But for both instances, you understand why she needs to insist, so it comes off as reasonable on her end rather than an act of stubbornness. Game Peach, on the other hand, is much more openly stubborn, something we mostly get to see in the RPGs. It's also linked to a theme those games have of Peach wishing for more adventures but not having the self-defense abilities to go alone. If you want yet another list, in Super Mario RPG she's told that traveling with Mario is too dangerous, so she proceeds to sneak out of her room to join the team anyways. In Superstar Saga, she insists on going to Little Fungi Town despite Toad's concerns, and whenever you leave her room during the escort mission, she makes a comment on how it wasn't so bad, including when she gets kidnapped, thus completely dismissing Toad's worries in favor of a desire for adventure. In Partners in Time, the fact Toadsworth seems so worried seeing her leave implies they had the same song and dance, with him trying to convince her not to use the time machine only for her to do it anyways. Same deal with Dream Team, with Peach getting on the platform and then approaching Luigi's dream. Then you have Paper Mario 64, with her liking more and more the idea of sneaking out, which Trick explicitly points out. In Thousand Years Door, she straight up leaves earlier to avoid Toadsworth, and by the end of the game still wants to adventure. In Super Paper Mario, she insists on helping Mario rather than rest, feeling responsible for the Chaos Heart. I'd also throw in Super Princess Peach with her insisting on adventuring, despite not exactly having dialogue once outside the castle. Or the Adventures comic where she insists on helping save Mario. On that note, does her clinging to the idea of there being a prophecy about her hero saving her in the 86 anime count as stubbornness? I could also see some people point out her refusal to give up in Showtime when the theater gets destroyed, but that's determination, not stubbornness. Overall, Game's Peach is one stubborn lady. For the temper, admittedly, this isn't something that's as present in the games, which is a bit of a shame honestly. It's always fun seeing Peach yell about stuff all the while not really being able to fight back. It's like seeing an angry puppy. But yeah, Game's Peach has gotten angry on a few occasions. In the 86 anime, she fights Bowser the whole way through, same with Paper Mario 64. In the Adventures comic, it's very obvious. In Super Paper Mario, it's easy to get her riled up. In the Mario Striker series, everything's edgier, and that includes Peach being Miller, easily losing her cool. The intro of Super Princess Peach also has her get mad quickly. And look, despite her temper barely showing up nowadays, her Japanese concept art for the movie included it. I also want to mention Mario Sunshine because while playing to get footage for this video, I talked to her a lot and it turns out she's quite pissed in the beginning of the game. Like, I've never been the biggest fan of her portrayal in this game due to how submissive she is, for lack of a better word. Like, you'd think a princess would speak up about what's on her mind rather than letting Mario and Toadsworth call the shot for her. But yeah, as it turns out, she complains a lot before Bowser kidnaps her. It's great. And the thing with those examples is, it's not just Peach getting angry, it's her being mean about it. That's why I didn't include the ending of the scenes at least. Yes, Peach is angry in that moment, including when getting on the Odyssey, but it's kind of just that, being pissed off, and rightfully so. Looking at the other examples, in the 86 anime she gets mad about the makeup and smashes the mirror on the Koopa's face, which is pretty uncalled for. In Super Paper Mario, she gets angry about the wedding and starts talking shit about the people who made the dress for no reason. This is really what I mean when saying Peach has a temper. It's not just about her being angry, it's her getting uncharacteristically rude about it, which is honestly a very interesting side of Peach, might also be why I like it. It shows that even the nicest people have their limits. In comparison, movie Peach doesn't get angry throughout the movie. Yeah, she frowns a lot, but that's because the situation is serious, and she's rightfully taking it seriously. Even when facing Bowser, she doesn't come off as angry, but more so as serious and hateful. The only time she gets angry is when Mario steps in during the meeting with Cranky and she talks him down, but even that's a small thing, and she's not mean about it, so her anger is justified. Okay, so in my original comparison post I had a shorter table with some elements I decided to remove in Manual 1 because those aren't actually personality traits. It was mostly to highlight some more differences between the two, showing that there are two completely different characters, not just in terms of personality but in terms of backstory and priorities as well. But in reality, them having different backstories and priorities doesn't bother me. After all, the movie took quite a few liberties with the Mario lore, this is no different. Still, a few words about this for the sake of being throughout. For the backstory part, honestly this doesn't matter in the slightest. The movie it's its own continuity, so Peach having a different backstory from the games isn't an issue. Again, this was to highlight how those are two different characters down to the backstory in an admittedly petty way. For context, I made this table sometime after the Showtime box art change, which I was salty about. And while I'm a huge fan of the Peach being a Toadette canon, it's pretty obvious Nintendo sees her as a human, so might as well throw in a new origin story into it. Same deal with the line about them being defined by different things. Now, I do believe that Peach never mentioning baking the movie is because Illumination is trying to make her a strong female character, and God forbid women like cooking. Still, this is yet again something that's pretty insignificant. I mean, it's a bit sad they remove something Peach is so often related to, especially since they don't really do anything with movie Peach's curiosity for the human world, but it's more of a small detail than anything else. And while I would have appreciated a mention in a throwaway line, they don't exactly have time for cake with Bowser on the way, so it's fine. Now, the last point is one that I feel is worth pointing out. Basically, movie Peach's whole deal is being the protector of the Toads. It's the role she gave herself due to her own backstory and she clearly takes it incredibly seriously, being willing to do anything to protect her people. They're her number one priority. Game's Peach on the other hand, she still clearly cares a lot about her people and wants to protect them, but she's also a lot more aloof about her role as a leader. Now, I don't exactly remember where I read this, could have been a game description, could have been an interview, so take it with a grain of salt, but I vividly remember reading from some official source that Game's Peach doesn't care that much about ruling her kingdom. She's more about going on walks and enjoying herself, letting Toadsworth do most of the work. Again, I don't remember, I can't find the source, so I might be wrong on that, but I remember reading something along those lines. It may have been is that one article I read a few years back in which Miyamoto joked about how you could easily kidnap Peach by giving her cake, which is a statement I'm not the biggest fan of, but yeah, it could have been this article. And if Peach not taking her role seriously is indeed an actual thing, that's a pretty major difference between the two. Finally, there's a few things that weren't in my original post, as it took until Wonder and the Showtime Transformation trailer to get me back to think about this comparison and realize a few more things, so here are those additions. First off, you have their courage, bravery, and them being adventurous, which is something the two have in common, but at the same time its importance is disputable. Thing is, yes, both Movie Peach and Game Peach are all three of those things, but the thing is, so is every other character. Game Peach is brave and adventurous, just like Mario, and Luigi after a pep talk, and the Toads including Captain Toad, and Daisy, and the Yoshis for the most part, and that random nabbit character Nintendo really likes for some reason. Same deal with the movie. Movie Mario is brave and adventurous, Movie Luigi turns out to be brave and does follow his brother in switching job, which does count as going to the unknown. Toad's whole thing is being brave and adventurous, and Movie Bowser knows his strength and isn't afraid to show it, same for DK. So while yes, this is a personality trait these two have in common, it's also something everyone else has as well, which does diminish its importance when comparing the two. What I mean is that the courage and desire for adventure is a trait that Peach possesses that does define her personality, but saying that Movie Peach and Game Peach are the same because they both have this trait is basically the same as saying that Peach and Mario are the same because they share it too. It's still part of the character, but when every other important character has the same trait, it doesn't work that well as an argument when comparing the two, especially when this is basically the only thing they have in common. I hope this makes sense. Hell, if you want to dig deeper, you could even argue that the adventurous side is yet another trait that is expressed differently. The short version is that Movie Peach goes on an adventure because she has to, while Game Peach does so because she wants to. Movie Peach doesn't seem to feel any particular way about going on an adventure, she's simply doing her duty. Meanwhile, Game Peach in the RPG is constantly put herself at risk wanting to go on an adventure, as already mentioned in the Subordinates part. I guess something could also be said about Game Peach having a bravery highlighted in a few instances like Paper Mario 64 or Super Paper Mario, while for Movie Peach the characters care less about her bravery and more about her fighting skills. But at the same time, I don't think how often a trait is called out by other characters really mean anything about whether or not this trait is there. Regardless if they mention it or not, both are brave. The difference here is that Game Peach being brave is at times seen as a surprise by characters who don't know much about her. Another thing I took a while to think about is the curiosity, which in that case feels closer to the sassiness in the sense that it's not expressed the same way. In the movie, Peach is curious about the human world, but instead of coming off as her being a curious person, it feels more like her wanting to know where she comes from to get some personal closure. All she knows is that she's a human, so she wants to know more about the human world. Game Peach on the other hand seems a lot more curious in general. She's open to try new things, go to new places, meet new people. It also seems to be one of her drives for adventure in the RPGs, like a way to step away from her real life on top of discovering new things. She comes off as a lot more interested in the world in general than Movie Peach does. You could also say something about Game Peach having an artistic side, which is lacking in the movie. She's a great baker who likes to decorate her cakes, she's an artist and a lot of people say the castle from Mario 64 is an art gallery, and she likes theater and is even a great actor, being able to easily change her attitude and voice to get into character. But then again, the movie doesn't have any time where Peach could talk about her hobbies. They already barely did anything with the curiosity for the human world, so it's possible that the eventual sequel will expand on this. But as it currently stands, you could point it out as yet another difference between the two. Oh, and also Game Peach is a fairly emotional person and doesn't take that much to drive her to tears, as proven very well by the sports and party games, while Movie Peach is the kind of character that you know will never cry. Not sure I missed that in my original comparison post. But anyways, those were some additions that took way too long to realize and felt important to point out, especially the brave and adventurous part. Now on to the next section.
That's peachy.
Okay, so this part had a pretty big change of direction compared to the first version. So originally, I thought that both Movie and Game Peach had their own body language, which overlapped in a few cases but still mostly stay separated. But at the same time, when writing down examples, I kept mentioning things that Game Peach does and Movie Peach wouldn't, but I didn't have much examples of the opposite happening. Same in my rewrite when I say in the tags that it might be more subjective than I thought. But then Wonder and the Showtime Transformation trailer came out and that's when I realized what was actually going on here. Thing is, it's not that the two of them have a different body language. In fact, Movie Peach's body language can fit Game Peach on a few occasions, notably in the sports games, the Adventures comic, and Showtime. Even if there are a few instances where I feel like Movie Peach's body language doesn't fit, I wouldn't be surprised if you could find an example of Game Peach doing something similar. Plus, I feel like a lot of my issues with movie Peach's body language actually has to do with her facial expressions, especially the most exaggerated ones. But those issues are likely due to her facial structure being a bit different, since the Adventures comic, for example, gives Peach exaggerated expressions that don't bother me. On top of that, I always found movie Peach's eyes to look weird, and in the Adventures comic, the thing that makes me say she has the same face as usual is her eyes. Same with Showtime with the renders giving her longer eyebrows and completely different clothes, but I still find her recognizable. So yeah, the issue is the facial structure rather than the expressions. However, while movie Peach's body language fits game speech, the opposite cannot be said, with like only 2 exceptions. For example, in the first Rabbids game when Peach shows up to the fight floating with a parasol Mary Poppins style, and then has Mario help her down despite not actually needing his help. Or at the end of Super Princess Peach when she's the one saving Mario, yet Mario is the one carrying her bridal style. I just can't see movie Peach do those. Then again, I don't see movie Peach being carried bridal style in general. Another much more recent example would be Mario Wonder. Peach's body language in that game is a lot more dainty, I think is the word. But yeah, there's a much more amplified level of gentleness and elegance in how she acts. I actually went back to 3D World to compare, and yeah, the fireball animation, sliding animation, and even walking animations are a lot more princess-like in Wonder. It's actually funny to see this not too long after the movie came out. Like, the contrast between the two is crazy. It even looks a bit off on Daisy, who has the same animations, and I say that as someone who doesn't see Daisy as a tomboy. She's loud, energetic, and competitive, but that doesn't mean she isn't feminine. In fact, she apparently likes shopping according to the wiki, and we do see her wear dresses on many occasions. Of course, she's going to look masculine next to Peach. Literally, the only way you could make Peach more stereotypically feminine would be giving her maternal instinct. Anyways, all this to say, the people making the animation for Wonder really went all in making Peach dainty, which heavily contrasts with the movie. Then there's Princess Peach Showtime, which perfectly encapsulates what I mean about movie Peach's body language fitting game speech, but not vice versa. Peach in these games can be a ninja, a sword fighter, a kung fu fighter, a cowgirl and a superhero, all of which give her a body language similar to the movie, but then she's also a baker, a mermaid and an ice skater, all of which I just can't see movie Peach do. Same for Radiant Peach, and movie Peach could never. Peach's normal form in this game is also her usual self, which doesn't exactly fit the movie version. Like how she stumbles on her feet when you jump in place. I doubt movie Peach would have this kind of issue. All in all, it's safe to say that the vast majority of Game Peach's body language doesn't fit movie Peach, because in their desire to make her look as badass as possible, they made her less dainty, graceful, regal and elegant. There's also something to say about the frequency of this body language. What I mean is, while Game Peach can act like movie Peach, it's incredibly situational, like the sport games, Adventures comic, or some Showtime transformations. Hell, I don't think any of movie Peach's body language fits the character in the Rabbids games, despite Peach being an action heroine in this one. Same with Smash, they kept her more regal body language. And that's also why the opposite doesn't work. Movie Peach is always walking around with intent, just never having the time to display any daintiness. Meanwhile, Game Peach has a lot more occasions to be relaxed and joyful, giving her a wider range of expressions and mannerisms and she's not constantly thinking about fighting. So that actually speaks to another issue with Movie Peach that explains why her body language is so limited compared to Game Peach. Movie Peach is a fairly one-note character whose whole thing is being badass, protecting her people and guiding Mario, not helped by a lack of character development. Game Peach on the other hand have been in dozens of games in which her role range from damsel to hero to athlete to partygoer, and in several of these she drops the happy front and shows many different emotions, thus making her a more developed character, hence having a wider range of expressions. Ironically enough, it seems to be the same thing for their voices. Movie Peach only has one range in her voice, which Game Peach is capable of doing but only does so in very specific cases. Most of the time, Game Peach has a completely different register, which Movie Peach can't do. There's also probably something to say about how Movie Peach's body language only fits Game Peach in the game where she's playing sport, the game where she's acting, and that one time she was a bit out of character. Same with the voice, with Game Peach playing a role being the only time her voice is similar to Movie Peach, while every other instance of her adventure keeps her usual higher pitched. But that's all I'm going to say about it because again I don't want to compare the voices much. And finally, just like for the fighting styles, the difference in body language exemplifies the personality each have and how different they are. A perfect example of that is the Showtime box art change, at least for the middle one. In the original, Peach is happy, peppy, welcoming, which is in line with who her character is. In the new one, she's serious and confident but in a snarky way, which some people even compare to her looking like a villain. And that snarkiness doesn't fit Game Peach much but is perfect for Movie Peach, which that change was clearly trying to copy given the facial feature changes. Let's say some talking about this box art, which led to some debates on Peach's character. Now this part doesn't really go with anything else, but I really wanted to talk about it. Basically, I'm very bothered by the fact that Peach had always been a character people talk shit about, complaining about her being bland and useless and stuff like that. And now those very same people are praising characters as completely different, as if Peach being completely out of character should be the standard for how she acts. Like, if you don't like Peach, stop trying to change her and just look up other medias that's female characters you like, or just make up your own. It also bothers me that to an extent, Illumination was trying to cater to an audience that never cared for Peach to begin with, rather than write her properly for the people who do like her, or even use the opportunity to show the people who dislike her that she's actually perfectly fine the way she is. And as an aside, I don't think writing movie Peach the way they did helps game Peach's character in any way. Had Peach been in character in the movie while still keeping that same role as Mario's guide, you can absolutely bet that Princess Peach Showtime will have still been made, along with Wonder, the RPG remake and the Thousand Years Door remake. After all, Peach is perfectly in character in those games. And while the movie was apparently in production for a while, it's entirely possible that Showtime was already at least in the brainstorming phase before the movie production even started. Also, 2 of those games are remakes of old games people have been wanting to get for years, so they're not reinventing Peach in any way, they're just catering to the nostalgia crowd. Hell, had Peach been written properly, the Showtime box art possibly wouldn't have been changed. Going back on topic, like I said, there's nothing wrong with Peach's character. It's completely fine to have a character that's sweet and soft and nice and doesn't like fighting. They can still be very fun characters who are strong in their own way. The issue is the execution, and that's where a lot of Mario games fall short. In the vast majority of mainline games, and even many RPGs, Peach has an incredibly limited role. She's the one who gets kidnapped, the one you only get to see at the beginning and ending of the game, who doesn't do anything outside of calling for help and baking cakes. But again, the issue is not her personality, it's the lack of screen time that prevents her from showing that personality. Take the first 3 Paper Mario games for example, those games do an amazing job showing us who Peach is, and people love her interludes in the first 2 games. And as said earlier, those interludes put a character into perspective by showing how she's able to help even when kidnapped, which is really good stuff. Super Princess Peach is also a game that did rather well, and the main criticism people have actually isn't about Peach, it's about the game mechanics being seen as disputable and sexist. Hell, even Smash Bros. Brawl! For most of the story, Peach is completely useless, but the one cutscene she does think, she absolutely steals the show. Same with the other games that feature her more heavily, like Super Mario RPG, and obviously Showtime, which did an excellent job with her. I'm especially impressed by how she was written in Super Mario RPG. She gets kidnapped twice yet still remains a team member with the best healing abilities. She's sweet and soft and kind and playful, but also stubborn and determined when she decides to join the group, which also shows her intelligence with her escape. They really did a fantastic job writing her in that game. And it's even better knowing this was originally an SNES game, meaning it's old and possibly the first time Peach was given her proper personality in a game. They really knocked it out of the park on the first try and I love it. Now I could also say the sports and party games do her justice through her animations, but let's be real, nobody actually cares all that much about the sport games outside of Mario Kart and Smash, so her appearances aren't as impactful as the RPGs. And on the other hand, you get the Mario Luigi series, where they did jack shit with her and it really sucks. I actually really like her in Superstar Saga, especially her desires for adventure clashing with her physical limitations. But in Partners in Time and Bowser's Inside Story, it's obvious they had no idea what to do with her. In Partners in Time, you could literally remove her from the game and nothing of importance will change. So most of it will be Bowser's kidnapping, but it's useless to the story anyways. They just wanted Adult Bowser in the game for the sake of having him and made this side quest as an excuse. And in Bowser's Inside Story, she's nothing more than a plot device. You could replace her with an unsentient magical thing and the game would be the same. Dream Team and Paper Jam are a bit better, at least from the little I saw of Paper Jam, but you can still tell they didn't know what to do with her. And when compared to the first 3 Paper Mario games that came before and around this series, the difference is very obvious. And on that note, the second Paper Mario trilogy didn't do shit with her either, same for most mainline games, which again isn't an issue with the character itself, it's how she's being used in the story. Hey, Fleur from the editing room here. So, as stated at the very beginning of the video, I wrote this script back in early 2024 and did the recording in summer of that same year, which was several months before the release of Mario & Luigi Brothership. I don't think the first trailer was even released back then, which by the way is why I haven't brought up this game in this video until now, at least in the script. But yes, as I'm talking about Peach in the Mario & Luigi series, I wanted to gush for a bit about the writing in this game because it's so good. First off, I love how they focused on her as a leader, with the head of idol wanting to learn from her. Even if, like I stated before, we don't really get to see Peach do a lot of ruling, including in this game. We do see more of her being a diplomat though. And outside of that, I absolutely love that they gave Peach an important role as an adventurer gathering intel for Mario & Luigi while at the same time never making a fight. And the 2 times she's given the opportunity to fight, she instead asks for help. Though I do wish her and Idol played some kind of supporting role during the final boss instead of being completely left out. By the way, as someone who writes Peach as a toad trying her best, I love how the game has a message with Idol on how they're not as strong as Mario & Luigi and their contribution might seem small, but it still is a contribution. And in fact, Idol helps a lot throughout the game. And I also love Peach admitting how scared she is but still choosing to push forward. So basically this game validates the way I portray Peach, which makes me happy. Finally, I love the way this game acknowledges Peach's kidnappings while still making her more than a damsel in distress, especially that one section where you can either have her or Luigi get kidnapped. It's such a clever way to put Peach's kidnappings in the game while still keeping her as an active character. And I also love how the last cutscene in the game is Bowser trying to kidnap Peach while the Mario Bros. 1 overworld team is playing, basically giving a light-hearted back to the status quo vibe to the ending, but again without tarnishing Peach's contribution in the main story. So yeah, good job Mario and Luigi series, you finally did Peach justice. Now back to the main video. So summary, it's a small word about the kidnappings. Ultimately, I don't think they should forever stop doing it, though things do need to change from the standard game. By that I mean they should take inspiration from Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario 64. And with the 2D platformer having more and more playable characters, I think the best they could do would be to keep making Peach playable in the 2D platformers, have a switch between a party member and a damsel in distress with interludes focus on her in the RPGs, or do something like Super Mario RPG in which she's boss. And for the big 3D platformers, I don't think it's okay to have her still be kidnapped. Nintendo shouldn't be ashamed of their status quo, especially since there are other Mario games in which the male characters get kidnapped or need help, which makes the situation more equal. Hell, in the intro of 3D World, a game in which Peach doesn't get captured, we still see her react to Bowser showing up as if she was about to get grabbed, followed by Mario putting a protective hand in front of her. I'm pretty sure Mario Wonder does the same with Yellow Toad. I'd love to see more of that kind of small acknowledgement. Also, Peach has a lot more screen time than Luigi in Mario Odyssey, and is also great in that game despite spending the whole story being kidnapped, just saying. I actually made the comparison between Peach and Luigi in my original post, so I won't delve into it here. Go check it out if you're curious. Also, if Showtimes becomes an actual game series, which please Nintendo make it happen and need more of that game, it will really help in making Peach a proactive character while still having games in which she's kidnapped. All of this to say, Game's Peach deserves more love. She's perfectly fine the way she is, and it's sad to see so many people disregard her due to how mishandled she often is. And I really hope Showtime will lead more people to appreciate her, possibly even look back on the movie and realize the blunders they made by changing her, but that probably won't happen sadly.
Oh, no. Oh.
So, to conclude on all this, I think it's safe to say that movie Peach was not a good adaptation, like, at all. I did express some uncertainty for traits like willingness to fight or kindness, but that's mainly because I like to take as much as possible into consideration when making an argument, in order to be true out. Ultimately, I do believe that they're not the same character, not even close, with a few personality traits that they might have in common barely overlapping or being overshadowed by something else. For example, Peach in Mario Wonder doesn't hesitate to fight, but her body language is incredibly different from movie Peach, so even if both are good at platforming and fighting enemies, it's not enough to make them feel like the same character. And what pisses me off the most about this situation is that, even putting personal bias aside, I genuinely think that Illumination didn't even try when writing Peach. They saw her design, realized she was a woman, and decided to put her into the strong female character box without caring at all about the actual character. Why do I believe this? 2 reasons. Yeah, we're doing this again. First, there's a rumor about how the original script of the movie was all about Peach being badass and saving the world, but then Nintendo of Japan read it and reminded Illumination of who the main character is supposed to be. If that rumor is true, it already says a lot about how little the studio cared about Peach. All they saw was a working pair of ovaries in a dress and decided to follow what's currently trending. Second, Nintendo released some of the concept art for this movie, and the ones featuring Peach are perfectly in character. And from my understanding, Illumination were given this concept art since, you know, they were the one making the movie. The spreadsheet about Peach shows many different sides of her personality. We have some neutral poses, including one to show what she looks like with pants, likely for reference for the Mario Kart section. We see her more elegant and dainty side, we see her trying her best, we see how she can be emotional, we see her tired of Bowser's shit, we even see her temper. This page alone gives us tons of characterization, and none of it is in the movie. How did they miss it? Literally all they had to do was copy from it. And now that I think about it, I'm angry that she had a parasol in the concept art, but it was never seen in the movie. I mean, come on guys, Peach having a parasol is iconic by now. As for the other concept art, there's one about the Mario Kart sections that don't really have anything to say about, it's just Peach being Peach. Same for the one with Toadsworth and Toadette that's not on the wiki for some reason. Then there's the one with her trying to get Mario to fight DK but seemingly not wanting to do the fight herself, which actually reminds me a lot of the 86 anime where she keeps hyping up Mario but never fights Bowser herself outside of throwing furniture. So that concept art is still in character. Oh, and there's one of her reacting to the redesign, which I find very funny because you can tell the artist had no idea what personality movie Peach would end up having, especially with her regal and elegant movie Peach looks here compared to the final product. On the wiki gallery for Peach, there's also an artwork made by an animator that according to Wikipedia worked on the movie story, and the hilarious part is that the art is a one art where Peach has a facial expression and stance that looks less close to the games, and I don't think it's just a question of art style. In fact, there's also 2 pieces on the wiki done by Daniel Fernandez Casas, who is apparently a character designer at Illumination, so not a writer or director. And it's worth noting their comic depict Peach in a way that's much closer to the games. Yes, both of the comics make her look in character. So overall, Nintendo of Japan and someone not involved in the writing were able to portray Peach perfectly in character for the art related to the movie, but the one art piece made by the head of story of the movie made her look off in comparison, which makes for a good transition for my third point. Third, writing Peach properly isn't difficult, like at all. Nintendo had been writing Peach the same way for almost 40 years now, with the most out of character iteration still having her core personality. If you think this doesn't count because the movie was made by a different studio, Ubisoft, which is a different studio, were able to write Peach as an action heroine all the while making her perfectly in character. And then they did it a second time, in a game that was being produced around the same time as the movie. Also, there's the people who made the rabbits, you know, the early 2000 version of the Minions. So what's Illumination's excuse? And if you think it doesn't count because it's a game and not a movie, the 86 anime is right there. In fact, this anime was the first time Peach was given a personality since it released 1 year after the first Super Mario Bros. Game. And if you compare her personality in the anime with the current one, very little changed. Same for Bowser, by the way, he's adorable in this anime. So yeah, writing Peach isn't hard. Nintendo has done it over 50 times, Ubisoft has done it twice and nailed it both times. Sakurai, the creator of Smash Bros, and his team do a fantastic job keeping her sweet and soft personality despite putting her in fighting games. The people in charge of the sport games, Camelot I believe for some of them, also write her properly. Same for whoever makes the Mario and Sonic Olympic games, the Paper Mario games, and Alpha Dreams when they made the Mario and Luigi series. While I dislike the way they barely use Peach in the Mario and Luigi games, she was still in character. And don't get me started on the hundreds of thousands of fan works that were done since the creation of the Mario franchise, and how many of them were able to make Peach much more true to her characters than Illumination. Honestly, there's no excuse as to why Illumination fucked up this badly. When unpaid amateur fans can do a better job than your multi-million budget companies that hire professional writers, you know something's wrong. Look, I know writers aren't paid all that well, hence the strike in 2023, and I know Illumination produces garbage after garbage, but still, it's pretty humiliating for them to be the only ones messing up in writing one specific character, where literally everybody else around them does the job without a hitch, including a literal fighting game series. No, I am not over the fact that the pitch from a series of fighting game is more in characters than the one from an hour and a half long movie in which you only fight 3 times. How did this happen? And about the studio making garbage movies, I believe that regardless of the quality of the product, we should hold Illumination to the same high standard we hold other studios that make animated movies, instead of letting them off the hook. We shouldn't settle for below average products that cost the same as the high quality ones, but that's a whole other debate. Speaking of movie studios, there's probably something to say in general about female representation and the strong female character stereotype being the current hype for Hollywood, and how Illumination wrote Peach that way because of it, but I don't know enough about the topic to discuss it properly. The subject of female representation is a pretty long and complex one, although I like to shorten it with no one knows how to be normal when writing women because apparently women are alien compared to men, and how about we let women direct movies for once. But anyways, yeah, I won't go into it here. Besides, like I said in the intro, my issue isn't with which character archetype movie Peach is, it's with how out of character she is and to a lesser extent the repercussion in how people see her. So the strong female character thing is a whole other issue from what this video is about. That being said though, looking at all those personality changes and how they were changed, it does seem like Illumination was so focused on making movie Peach as badass as possible that it came at the cost of every single one of her personality traits. I already mentioned it in the intelligence and body language part, but I do think it extends to every other trait as well. If you go back to the list, every change is either due to trying to make her badass, or because the movie rushed through everything and didn't enough time to dwindle on some traits. Seriously. Why does movie Peach fight with a fist? Because Magic and Parasol are for silly little girls and she's a badass woman! Why being this confrontational? Because she's a badass. Why is she not as smart? Because why thinking when she can punch her problems away? Hell, it's worth noting that Game's Peach is at her most clever when she can't defend herself. In Paper Mario 64, she can't face off against Bowser's army, so she sneaks around. In the Adventures comic, she knows she'll lose against the Koopalings and their army, so she runs away and takes quick decisions. In Superstar Saga, she can't refuse a meeting because Cacletta will attack regardless as she's powerless against her, so she switches with Bordetta. But since movie Peach doesn't have such weaknesses, she doesn't need her brain. Why isn't she as nice? Because badass people are snacky to others. Same for her not being sassy in a playful manner or being overconfident. Why isn't she moved to tears after losing Mario? Because badass people don't cry. Why isn't she stubborn? Because being badass means everyone follows her lead without question. Why being serious like that? Because badass people focus on the fight ahead. You get the idea. And yes, she also have stuff that I believe are missing due to a lack of runtime, like a curiosity, hobbies or temper. Then there's also her lack of diplomacy skills, which I have no idea why they removed it. Like if they were trying to give her a weakness, why make it the one thing a princess should be good at? What was that about? And again, the issue isn't the strong female character archetype in on itself. It's Illumination trying to push her character into a specific archetype to the point of losing her core personality, regardless of what this archetype is. I mean, I don't take issue with Peach's body language and behavior in the Adventures comic, or the Striker games, or the Olympic games, or some of the Showtime transformations, or any other game where she isn't as dandy or soft or delicate as she usually is, because those games still remember what a core personality is and take the time to display it on several occasions, thus balancing out those badass moments. Anyways, one last thing I want to say about Illumination is how much I hate the attitude they have about game speech. It honestly feels like the writer don't like game speech at all, and were trying to quote-unquote improve her by making a so-called better and much more cooler version of her. It's all over the movie. When Toad meets Mario, he immediately hypes up how great Peach is. When she does the level as demonstration, the camera keeps slowing down to show just how cool and badass she is, with Mario saying it as well in case you weren't watching. In the Peach's song, the first line is Bowser calling Peach cool. Even with Mario being the main character, you could easily argue she doesn't actually need him and could have won against both Dicky and Bowser easily. But the biggest proof of the disdain the people making this movie have for game speech is this line.
That is how you princess!
With this line, the movie is literally telling you, hey, look at our Peach, isn't she amazing? Look how strong and badass she is, so much better than that whip that keeps getting kidnapped. By the way, writing this, I honestly believe that Illumination talking about the Adventures comic was their way to save face against the backlash. I already explained in the intro why the Adventures argument is flawed. And as a bit of an aside, it actually becomes funny to see how much they were trying to make her look badass compared to the Nintendo of America shorts made for Princess Peach Showtime. Like the one for Kung Fu Peach opens with the voiceover calling her elegant and glamorous, focusing on her beauty before her abilities. Same for Ninja Peach and even Cowgirl and Sword Fighter Peach to an extent. In a way, it inadvertently says something about Game Peach and Movie Peach being two different characters. Hey, Fluff from the editing room again. So originally, I wanted to talk about what the directors and such had to say about Peach in interviews, in case it further proved my point about them looking down on her, but I struggled to find anything quickly and decided to do it later, and well, it is later now. Alright, so first of all, the Anna Taylor-Joy interviews on YouTube don't count in my opinion, since again, writing the character in this dialogue wasn't her job. I do find it funny to see her claims that Movie Peach is good at bringing people together and making plans because no, she's not. But again, her job was to voice the character and use her popularity to promote the movie. She didn't get to choose how Movie Peach was written. As for other interviews, I did find a variety interview with Miyamoto in which he talks about wanting to make game speech stronger, which I'll actually address in this video in a few minutes. I didn't have the article when I wrote the script, but what I have to say in this upcoming part fits what I want to say about this line. Also, reading this interview is pretty funny because it's really upset that they quote, push that even further for the movie end quote. So if anything, this is basically Miyamoto admitting to Movie Peach being out of character. And while I'm on Miyamoto, I also found this part from a student interview in which he basically parrots what people say about game speech having no personality, or at least that's the vibe it gives with him talking about trying to keep her stoic in the games while the movie version is more human. Like, I don't want to get into the whole does Miyamoto dislike stories debate, but also Peach has plenty of emotion in the RPGs, including the older ones. I don't know, this whole paragraph does not sit well with me and feels very dismissive of Peach's character. To top it off, I want to point out Salon for Global Content, which seems to compile info from interviews left and right, and one part mentions how this movie was the first time Miyamoto had to sit down and really think of who Mario was as a person, except we already know who Mario is as a person from how he acts in the games. So if Miyamoto has this to say about Mario of all characters, I'm not surprised he's so dismissive of Peach. By the way, I cannot repeat that in the Miyamoto part, but it felt more noteworthy to point it out with the article. And yes, I know this part is supposed to be about Illumination, not Miyamoto, but the truth is I couldn't find anything about Peach from the CEO or directors. Hell, I couldn't even find proof of the rumors that Movie Peach is meant to be based on the Adventures comic. I tried to look up Mario movies interviews in general, interviews from the CEO, interviews from each director, but came up short when it comes to Peach. All of the articles online are understandably about the movie as a whole, its production, or Mario's character since he's the main character. It also doesn't help that a lot of these interviews feel like corporate talk, or those vague sentences to promote the movie that I feel like I've heard a million times despite never reading or listening to interviews. It probably also doesn't help that I'm doing this in early February 2026, meaning a lot of the results are from interviews from after the movie came out or are about the upcoming Galaxy movie. Now, there was this line from an interview with Chris Pratt, along with a video with several cast members hyping up how much more active Peach is compared to game speech, but again, they are voice actors, so I don't want to take their opinion into account when it comes to the character's writing. Although, I would recommend watching that second interview because in the second half they talk about what goes into voice acting and it's very interesting. I also want to bring up that I found two podcasts, one on YouTube and one on Spotify, in which one of the two directors, Ed Scudder, talks about the production of the movie. And the reason I bring it up is because I was able to skim through the YouTube podcast with the subtitles on and so no mention of Peach's character, but for the Spotify one, since it doesn't have subtitles or a transcript, at least that I know of, I couldn't be bothered to listen to it. So it's possible one of the directors talked about Movie Peach and I missed it. I mean, it's also possible this is the same podcast, but given the difference in length and channel name, I'm pretty sure it's not. By the way, I don't have a Twitter account, meaning if any writer gave some info there, I won't be able to see it unless it appears on their main page. And even then, I can only see the first post if it's a thread. I also don't have access to the comments. So unless there are screenshots of those posts somewhere, I have no way of seeing them. And in the case of the Mario movie, I couldn't find any screenshot. And finally, I don't know if there is a director commentary out there or not, and if there is, I couldn't find it. So yeah, other than the Miyamoto interviews, nothing noteworthy. Also, not related to Peach, but I just wanted to bring it up while I'm at it. At several points I mentioned that Rabbids Sparks of Hope and Showtime were made around the same time as the movie without giving any official sources, which is because it makes sense time-wise. The games came out in 2022 and 2024, and I'm assuming both had between 2 and 5 years of development minimum since making games takes a while, even with a large studio. And I found an article from The Art in which one of the movie directors confirms that production started in 2019 if not earlier. So all this to say, logically it makes sense for those games to have been produced at the same time as the movie. And one last unrelated thing, I just wanted to let you know that the Mario movie is actually the only Illumination movie I've watched, meaning the negative opinion I have of the studio is all based on second-hand information. I don't think I know enough about their movies to say they suck, but since I haven't actually watched any of them, it's best to tell my whole rant against this studio with a huge grain of salt, especially since I couldn't find any interviews that proves my point about them disliking game speech. Well, unless the voice actors are supposed to be mouthpieces for the studio, I guess. And for those who have watched their movies, I would definitely be interested to hear about how Illumination write their own in general and how it reflects on Movie Pitch's writing. I think this would be a more productive discussion than me just giving a rant about how little effort they put into adapting Peach that's based on nothing but speculation. Anyways, back to the video. Fun fact, this whole thing about Illumination looking down on game speech is actually the main reason why I'm so fired up against this portrayal. Am I taking it personally? Oh, absolutely. I'm one of those kids who grew up selling their soul to Nintendo, and Peach was my favorite as a kid, and even today she remains my favorite. If anything, making that post back in September made me realize even more how much I'm attached to this character. So to have a studio not only make her out of character but mock her actual portrayal, and have everyone in this shit up, yeah, that doesn't fly with me. Although, like I said in the intro, this isn't a reason to harass anyone. In fact, I did my silly little post in my silly little blog and let Movie Pitch fans alone because I get nothing from shitting on their enjoyment. Same with the people working on the movie. If they're accepting feedback, you can tell your opinion to them, but that's no excuse to start a harassment campaign on them or the studio, or even insult them in your feedback. Again, this is a fictional character I hold dear, but it's still a fictional character. So I'm making my random ass little video talking about my random ass opinions, but that's kind of it outside of like answering potential asks about it on my Tumblr. Once I'm done with this video, I'll just move on to other things until the next movie comes out or something. Speaking of moving on, another thing I wanted to talk about in this conclusion is the fact that apparently Shigeru Miyamoto, the man who created Mario for the casual fans watching this video, said in an interview something about how the way Movie Pitch was written is similar to how he'd always pictured Peach's character to be. If he did indeed said that, I'm having a hard time believing him. And it's due to one simple fact. If Miyamoto had wanted Peach to be like that for years, why didn't he write her this way then? Thing is, Miyamoto is arguably one of the most influential people at Nintendo. Just look at the whole modern Paper Mario situation and how one sentence from him completely changed the genre of the series. So if he wants Peach to be written a certain way, he could have had her written that way. Especially when taking into account all the sport, party and smash game in which she's a fully playable character who doesn't get captured. So if you wanted Peach to be more badass, how come she isn't? Looking at all the Switch games featuring Peach, you have Odyssey, New Bros. Deluxe, Origami King and Luigi Mansion 3 where she's still a damsel in distress, and in the short screen time she has is still written the same way as usual. You have Mario Maker 2 where she's not playable and I believe she barely appears. You have 2 party games, 2 sport games, 1 striker game and 1 Olympic games, all of which still write her the same way. You have the 2 Rabbit games that write her the same way, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Mario 3D World and Mario Wonder in which her body language is the same as usual, with Wonder even doubling down on the daintiness and even giving her a slightly higher pitch voice at times. Super Mario RPG and the 1000 Years Door remake in which she's still the same as usual and even gets kidnapped, and Princess Peach Showtime which still writes her as usual in a normal form, has several costumes that focus on the softer side including the very last transformation, and outside of Regent Peach the game overall makes it clear that each level is a play with Peach playing a character. So yeah, are we sure Miyamoto wants Peach to be like Movie Peach? No, because it doesn't look like it. And as a reminder, Super Mario Wonder and Princess Peach Showtime were being developed at the same time as the movie, Rabbids Sparks of Hope possibly as well. Now there is one thing I want to point out, which to me might explain Miyamoto's words. Remember when I said Peach had a temper at times? Well, the best examples of it are in the 86 anime and Adventures comic, both of which are not games but were still worked on by Nintendo of Japan at a time where they were more willing to try new things, before becoming overprotective of their IP and deciding everything needed to be tamer. It's also worth noting that Paper Mario 64 and Super Paper Mario, both of which have more story, also feature a Peach that easily gets angry, so it does seem like a personality trait Nintendo wants her to have but doesn't know how to express in the mainline series. Because of that, I can't help but wonder if Miyamoto saw how serious Movie Peach was, thought of this hot-tempered version of Peach, and came to the conclusion that they were the same. I don't know if this makes much sense, and I also don't want to imply that Miyamoto is an idiot who can make a story because he's not an idiot, but between that statement and Illumination using the Adventures comic as an excuse, I'm basically grasping at straws that could connect it to Movie Peach, and the one thing that sticks is the temper some versions of Peach have. And last thing about it, it's worth noting that Peach isn't the only one who got butchered. Mario lost his happy-go-lucky attitude and is a lot more cynical. Bowser is much more cruel toward his army and isn't genuine about his romantic feelings. Kamek is a supporting yes man instead of a sarcastic terror dad who thinks he's smarter than everybody else. You get the idea. So if all the other characters got butchered, including the main character Mario, and Miyamoto let it slide, then why would Peach be spared? On that note, I wouldn't be surprised if some of this characterization came from Illumination being like, yeah, don't worry, we're movie maker, we know what sells in the West, let us do what we want with those characters, you'll see. Especially considering that one rumor about the original script being all about Peach. Oh yeah, and regardless of the reason, by the end of the day I mostly think that Miyamoto's words were corporate bullshit more than anything else. The fact Game's Peach is still being written the same as usual confirms it to me. But about movie Peach herself, can she be rewritten in the sequel? Honestly yes, and I'd be incredibly happy if they made her a better adaptation in the sequel. Although I think the best way for them to approach it would be to just retcon her personality. Maybe throw in a joke about how now that there isn't a war anymore she can chill out. It's lazy, but I don't trust Illumination to do better. And also I'm not sure how you could do better. Like, I thought a bit about it, but what I came up with really doesn't satisfy me. Basically, it will be set on the idea of there being a third movie, with the second movie basically putting Peach in a transition between a movie version and a games version, with the third movie rating her closer to Game's Peach. For the second movie, the idea would be that very early on she gets in a friendly fight but pushes herself too much, causing her to break either an arm or a leg, which stays like that for the rest of the movie. Because of this, movie Peach can't physically fight, forcing her to learn not only to rely on other people for help, but to also be less impulsive and instead use her brain to solve problems. She could also get herself a few hobbies, like continuing with her interest for the human world, or if you want to make her closer to the game, give her an interest for arts or baking. And just so we're on the same page, Peach being in a cast does not mean she stands on the side and does jack shit the whole way through. She can still participate in the action and help in different ways that don't involve fighting directly, you know, like Game's Peach often does. And by the end of the movie, she still has some of her fairy attitude and sass from the first movie, but she learned a few personality traits from a game version, hence the third movie rating her better. Now, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of the idea, mainly because it involves making someone disabled for a while in a way that comes off as punishment, which is pretty fucked up. And for those suggesting maybe she sees something that makes her terrified of fighting, I'm pretty sure talking about trauma is even worse. And as a reminder, we're dealing with a movie made by Illumination here. Do you really trust them to handle those topics properly? Then there's also the possibility of having her blackmail for the whole movie, but if it didn't stop her the first time, it won't stop her here. That's also why the main idea that came to mind is to have her break a bone. With the way she was written in the first movie, I just don't see movie Peach willingly stand aside from the fight unless she was physically forced to. But at the same time, I'm not the biggest fan of my idea because again, it's admittedly ableist. So if anybody has any suggestions on this, I'm actually very curious to hear what others might come up with. And as for Illumination, if they do decide to write movie Peach like Game's Peach, they should just take the easy way out and retcon her. It's Illumination, they know how to take the easy way out. Hey, Fluff from the editing room yet again. So it looks like they're taking the easy way out after all? Maybe? As I'm recording this, it's March 25th, 2026, meaning we got all of the trailers in which Peach barely has any screen time, a bunch of promotional renders and posters, a couple clips there and there, and that ice skating Olympics thing. And so far, I'm kind of conflicted on the portrayal, but also pretty hopeful. Looking only at the promotional material outside of the trailers, it does seem like they're genuinely trying to make movie Peach more similar to Game's Peach, to the point of even using one of the game's render as a base for a promotional render, which they hadn't done for the first movie. It's honestly pretty funny to see how much giving Peach a parasol back changes how they portray her. There's also that drop-up thing in which we see her discover a galaxy, and she's very in character here, and it does seem to be a scene from the movie. Same with the scene with Mario giving her the parasol. She's very happy and bubbly and giddy and overall feels a lot more like Peach. But at the same time, if you look at the movie trailers themselves, she's still the same badass fighter from the first movie. Her having a parasol doesn't make her any less of a martial artist who fights first and asks questions second. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm conflicted on all this. It feels like they are trying to make her more in character, but I don't know how much it will stick throughout the movie. Oh, and we also have that junior teaser with the Princess Peach Showtime reference, showing that Peach has a cookbook, but we don't know if she will explicitly mention being a baker and the book, or if they just put it there as an easter egg that no character will comment on. In other words, just because that book exists doesn't mean that movie Peach will be said to enjoy baking. It could just be a Bleak and You Miss It easter egg. So yeah, overall it definitely feels like an improvement, but it's not quite there yet. I definitely feel better about her character though. And if they make a third movie and keep taking that direction for a character, I'd be more than happy. And that actually makes the upcoming conclusion of this video a bit funny because I sound very pessimistic in it since I wrote it over a year ago, aka before we got any info on the Galaxy movie. So yeah, disregard my words near the end of this video, things are looking brighter than I make it sound. And one last thing since I'm at it, a while ago now I've decided I wouldn't watch any sequel to the Mario movie and I will stick to it out of principle, even with Peach being written better, which also means I'm not doing a follow-up video on Movie Peach. You guys who watch the Galaxy movie will do the work of analyzing Peach and tell me how much they improved her. I'll probably look up what people thought of the movie out of curiosity and watch a video reaction when those roll around, but I'm not giving Illumination my money. So I think I'll review the first movie at some point, I have some things to say about it. Anyways, back to the video, I really want to get this done before the official Galaxy release. Okay, so with all of that said, where do we go from here? Honestly, I have no idea. Best case scenario, Illumination writes Peach properly in the sequel and we all forget this shit ever happened, but I doubt this will be the case. To be honest, I could live with the movie doing its own thing with Peach as long as she remains in character in the games. I will still be unhappy about the positive reception of Movie Peach, especially if Illumination keeps insulting Games Peach, but I could live with it. I will say, Mario Bros. Wonder and Princess Peach Showtime give me hopes that Peach will still be written properly, but those games were produced at the same time as the movie, so who knows how Nintendo will write Peach in the games that are currently barely past the brainstorming phase of, especially if they decide to take some inspiration from the movie or its upcoming sequel. I mean, I've already seen people say Bowser's fight in Wonder was inspired by his song in the movie, but then again Bowser is the dude with 7 children named after music stars, so him liking music isn't that far off. Also, I don't think it was inspired by the movie, it was just a game mechanic Nintendo thought would be fun. Anyways, going back to Peach, honestly I'm wary of the future of this character. It doesn't help that I've heard a few stories about Sega of Japan letting Sega of America influence their games and stories to a point that many hate for making their characters unrecognizable. I really don't want Nintendo to fall into the same trap. I could also see a period of Nintendo trying to incorporate some movie elements into the game but deciding to go back to how Peach usually is due to backlash. I mean, the Mario movie gave them a ton of money and Movie Peach received a generally positive reception, but then Nintendo got a lot of hate for changing Showtime's box art, on top of people complaining about her voice as well. So I could definitely see Nintendo being confused by all this, leading to a potential experimental period with Peach's character getting a few changes that would hopefully be reverted back. So for now, I'm cautiously optimistic. I do want to trust that Nintendo will keep her characters the way it is, but with the movie making over $1 billion, I don't know how long it will be until the bridge between the two universes is crossed. Thanks for watching. That video was long into the making, so I really hope I was throughout enough. As said, you can find in the description the link to the original post and its additions, along with my Movie Peach scenes rewrite. I'm also going to put in the description the link to the wiki galleries as I kinda went ham on it to get pictures to illustrate this video, and there is a lot, and I mean a lot on it, and a lot of the more obscure stuff is very cute and interesting to see. I highly recommend checking it out. Likewise, you will find in the description the links for the video I got some of the game footage. I tried using as much of my own footage as possible, but I don't own every single Mario game and would rather not pirate Switch games for 10 seconds of cutscene. Finally, I'll be more than happy to talk in the comments about the content on this video, but I'm going to talk like an arrogant asshole for a second there and ask you to please use actual arguments if you want me to answer you. Like you can still post a comment saying I disagree or I like Movie Peach or she's like in the Adventures comic, but don't expect any response from me. That's also why I took some time in this video to talk about the Adventures comic, Miyamoto's claim, or even mention the argument of Movie Peach being written properly because Peach is playable in some games. Those are the arguments that I brought up the most often, so might as well say my piece about it. Especially the argument about Peach playable in some games. That argument completely ignores the personality she displays in those games and it pisses me off. That being said, if instead you say for example that Movie Peach is actually smarter than I claim and have a list of examples to back it up, or want to dwell more into the mainline games and Peach's relationship with fighting in those, I'd be more than happy to exchange with you. I'm especially curious to hear from the people who watch the American cartoons from the 90s, since I've seen it being brought up a few times as well. I'd love to see some people bring up notable Peach moments from this cartoon, saying what personality traits those moments display and whether it makes her more similar to Movie Peach or Games Peach, or a mix of both. I'm genuinely curious about this. Because yeah, the reason why I didn't mention this cartoon has nothing to do with some desire to stick to the Japanese version of the character. It would even be hypocritical since the Illumination movie is an American product. And I guess there might be an argument for American Peach being different from Japanese Peach, meaning the movie technically wrote her properly, but at the same time there's this issue of how much influence this movie might end up having on the games, in which case her being a different character is not a good thing. That's also why I said I could live with Movie Peach existing as long as the game stays the same. Last thing I could say, if I had to choose a studio this movie could have been made by, I would have gone with DreamWorks. I know Disney is good at writing fairy tales, but for some reason I feel like DreamWorks would have done a better job than them. But with all that said, thanks again for watching and bye!